It's time for Football at 4 with 97.3 ESPN.com's Andrew DiCecco.
My first allegiance is what will be best for the Philadelphia Eagles and our fans for the next 3, 4, 5 years.
Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios. It's Football at 4.
Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Latest edition dropped this morning. Adam Kaplan, Jeff Moshe, the latest on Joe Flacco, who was introduced to the media today. Also, you can catch on there the latest intel about the Eagles' defense, free agency, and more. Also, we have Q&A on the podcast as well. But joining us every Thursday here on 97.3 ESPN is Andrew DiCecco, and his appearance being brought to you by Dr. Lyle M. Back for everything from skincare to cosmetic surgery. Go to iloveLyleBack.com or call 856-MAKEOVER for Dr. Lyle M. Back, proud sponsor of Football at 4. And as all guests, Andrew appears on the Boardwalk Kind of Hotline. Andrew, how you doing on this Thursday? It might help if I actually hit the button for you to come on, Andrew. Sorry about that. I'll try it again. How are you doing today, Andrew?
I'm doing well, Josh. How's it going?
I'm doing all right, man. So, obviously, the NFL lives in their own little world because on NBA trade deadline day, Joe Flacco gets introduced to the Philly media. And one of the things I thought that stood out from what he said to the media today, I want to ask you about is, we've been having a lot of conversation about what the Eagles' offense could look like this year. I thought the one comment that stood out to me a lot is when Flacco said that he looked at the coaching staff here, and that's what really led to his decision to sign here. I thought that was a very interesting insight for him to say, listen, I wasn't really coming here because it's the Eagles. I was coming here because of the offensive coaching staff. I think that's a very interesting statement by the new backup QB.
Yeah, interesting. I also don't know how much Joe Flacco really knows about the coaching staff. I think that's kind of a nice thing to say in an introductory press conference. But, I guess it does speak to the young nucleus of coaches that are there. They've all been successful in different areas that they've been. Nick Sirianni's a brilliant offensive mind, and he will be able to kind of help Jalen Hurts help him get implemented into a new system. Joe Flacco has been in a number of systems. So I think that having that versatility and that football mind and that experience is really going to help Jalen. And, it is an interesting signing, but I don't know how much of a quarterback controversy there will ever be with Joe Flacco. I don't know that he's ever going to really challenge whomever the Eagles have as a young quarterback in front of them. But I think it's a good signing and a signing that's going to really help the young quarterback.
Yeah, I love what you brought up about the fact he's played with all those different coordinators over there. He had Cam Cameron, he had Jim Caldwell, he had Marty Mornhinweg, he had Gary Kubiak for a year. When you come from that much background, I feel like Joe Flacco can walk into that quarterback room, walk in there, and if Jalen Hurts is looking at something or the coach is showing something, like I hated last year, Andrew. The stupidest thing to me was, hey, Carson Wentz had a bad play. He walks to the sideline and he's talking to Nate Sudfeld and Jalen Hurts. Like, what are those guys going to tell Wentz? Whereas now when Hurts walks to the sideline, it's Joe Flacco, a guy who has literally played in every variation of the West Coast offense at this point.
Yeah, and that's a massive attribute that Joe Flacco is going to bring to the Philadelphia Eagles in that locker room. What is Nate Sudfeld and what were Jalen Hurts really going to give Carson Wentz? What kind of feedback were they going to provide as far as what they saw on the field that you were going to get from a coach or something like that? I think when you have a veteran guy like Joe Flacco, he's a good in between to go between Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts, and I think that he's, like you said, he's battle tested. He's played the Super Bowl. He's been in a number of different systems, and just having that experience is going to be invaluable moving forward.
Now, you mentioned Jalen Hurts. Andrew DiCecco joining us for Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Check out his latest article about Anthony Harris over at InsideTheBirds.com. Andrew, you mentioned Hurts, and someone asked me a question the other day, and I was saving this question for when you jumped on today, and that is, sometimes we have conversations as football people about what kind of quarterback is Hurts. So I want to ask you, in your evaluation of Jalen Hurts, is Jalen Hurts an anticipation quarterback, or is he a see it and throw it quarterback? And how does that affect his development becoming an NFL quarterback with the Eagles?
I think he's a see it and throw it type of quarterback, but you have to remember last season he didn't have that full off season, and we've kind of spoke about that before. But it's so valuable for as a young quarterback, more so than any other position, to have a full off season and get a preseason nonetheless. And he never really had that, so he was kind of thrust in there, and he was kind of playing out on instinct, I think, more so than having that polish to his game that he normally would have had in the preseason. So I think you saw a lot of his innate athleticism and certain the little subtle nuances of his game that he really needed to rely on, because he didn't have that sharp acumen to really fall back on from the summer and from OTAs and all those things. So I think he can ultimately change. I think the ceiling's there for him to become an overall quarterback, and that's why this is such an opportune time for him to really get to know a new coaching staff, have a quarterback like Joe Flacco help him, kind of expedite the process to learn the offense, and he gets to kind of learn from the ground up, just like everybody else. And now we're hopefully going to have a preseason, so we'll have that. But I mean, there's a lot to like when you see what Jalen Hurts was able to do without really having all the practice, that a lot of the veteran guys have had. So I mean, I think that the future looks bright for him.
Yeah, and I was a Hurts guy coming out of college because I loved his growth from being not a throwing quarterback to having 69% completion percentage at an offense at Oklahoma that required him to throw the ball way more than they had to at Alabama. And I think that he has shown the ability to grow. And those first two games, if you take out the throwaways, his completion percentage is a lot better than people give him credit for. So I see a quarterback who is getting better, who is improving. And I just think it's interesting because people are hungry. They want to know, Andrew, what to expect this year. And I feel like the right answer to tell them is, well, we got to wait and see because there's a lot of unknowns, but people still want some answers. So you're kind of like, I feel like we're all just trying to weed through and try to figure out how to answer some of these questions, because at the end of the day, we don't 100% know what Sirianni's offense or Jalen Hurts will be in 2021.
Yeah, I would just say to those that, as hard as it is to do, you got to be patient. You got to kind of let things materialize, because like you said, we don't know what a system is going to look like, but we have to trust that the coaches and the system is going to be in place for Jalen, and the offense for that matter, to really thrive and to build around his strengths and some of the things that he's able to bring that, let's face it, a lot of quarterbacks can't do some of the things that he can do. He has an innate athleticism. I think that he can improve from a ball placement perspective and a velocity. He's got to deliver the football with a little bit more velocity and anticipation. But there's a lot of intangibles there to like with him, and it's, there's no reason not to believe that he's going to have those areas of his game. They're going to be markedly refined this offseason, and we're going to see the player that we kind of envision him to be, which is, like you said, in college he continuously got better. He worked on his game. He's a competitor. Those are the traits that you look for in a franchise quarterback, and he has that. Not everybody has that mindset, and it's kind of cut from the same cloth like that. So I mean, there's something to work with. There's a good foundation there with Jalen, and I do think that this coaching staff is going to get the most out of him.
Andrew DiCecco joining us here for Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast on the Boardwalk kind of hotline here on 97.3 ESPN, at a DiCecco NFL on Twitter. Now, you mentioned the term franchise quarterback. Now, I want to clarify that because people have different definitions of what a franchise quarterback is. So when you talk about what Hurts' potential can be, can you define that a little bit more? Because I don't want people to just take your words out of context here.
Right. And when I mean franchise quarterback to me means the face of the franchise. The offense runs through him. He's going to be a big game quarterback, someone who's going to put the game on his shoulders, a playoff, will a team to the playoffs and hopefully beyond. That's a franchise quarterback. Everyone else that doesn't fit that mold to me is more so just an average quarterback. They're not the face of the franchise. They're guys that are continuing. Teams are obviously looking to replace every season. And there's countless examples across the NFL of guys that fit that mold of just the journeyman or just the replacement level starters. And I don't envision Jalen to be like that.
I happen to agree with you, which leads me to my next question. I want to expand upon a conversation you and Mike Gill had on Tuesday's edition of Football at 4, because you mentioned the fact that you would take Justin Fields over Jalen Hurts, for example, in this draft. And I agree with that 100%. And part of the reason why I agree with you on that is not as much about Fields, but as much as the fact that when I look at Hurts and I compare him to Trey Lance, Zach Wilson, and Mac Jones, I just don't feel like those guys are so much better than what Hurts brings to the table. I feel like people look at Hurts and they say, well, he was a second-round pick, and they almost like hold that against him. People forget, right, Andrew, that, listen, quarterbacks are drafted high all the time. I mean, do we remember guys like E.J. Manuel and Jamarcus Russell? Guys are overreached all the time. So just because one guy's a second-round pick and another guy's a first-round pick doesn't mean the first-round pick is always better automatically than the second-round pick.
Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes folks get enamored with the title of a first-round quarterback, but yeah, it's great to be selected in the first round, but you ultimately have to – that's just the beginning of it. You have to take that skill and you have to continue to expand on that. There's countless examples of guys that were taken in the second, third, fourth, and you look at Tom Brady, obviously it's a classic example of someone who's taken in the sixth round, and it's all about improving your game and making the most out of your opportunities when you get that chance. And yeah, he has that second round stigma, so to speak, but there's many people before last year's draft that thought that, and I was one of them, that anticipated him being a riser. I thought he was a top 50 player on my draft board, and it wouldn't have surprised me to see a team like the Patriots who were interested in him. I thought that they would have been a sneaky pick to maybe take him at the back end of that first round. But, nonetheless, yeah, I think that going to your point about Justin Fields, he's the only other quarterback that I can say, besides Trevor Lawrence, that is decidedly better than Jalen Hurts in nearly and seemingly every facet of the game. Those other ones, yes, Zach Wilson and Trey Lance, they have intriguing intangibles, but they both come with question marks, just like Jalen. And throw them into an offense, and they're going to have the same struggles that Jalen had. And there's going to be the same questions about them going in the next offseason. So I think you really owe it to Jalen Hurts to really give him a chance to be successful. He really was thrust in there last season, and now he gets a full year to develop and take what he's learned and get rid of some of his old tendencies and really build upon that. And hopefully we'll see something of a finished product next season and have a better idea of what he is as a pro.
Yeah, and listen, just to focus on the other quarterbacks for just a minute, aside from Hurts, it's not that I personally, like, for example, people like to poke fun at me because I was so anti-Mitch Trubisky a few years ago. I was ripping him from here to Kingdom Come, just over the top ridiculously, but I felt very strongly about it. And I don't per se hate Trey Lance, for example, but I feel like he has limited amount of experience. I don't hate Zach Wilson, but I feel like the two shoulder injuries combined with the Coastal Carolina game are some red flags for me. And I have to wonder, is Mac Jones and guys like him and Kyle Trask, are they system quarterbacks? Are they byproducts of their system? So to me, that's my negative with them. I don't hate those guys, but I just think if you already have Jalen Hurts, those three guys don't bring anything to the table that makes you turn around and say, no, I need that guy.
Yeah, that's like that would essentially be the equate to being a lateral move. Because those guys are, I do think, in the mold of a Kyle Trask or a Mac Jones, I think they are byproducts of their system. And really, how much better are they right now as a prospect than Jalen Hurts is? That you can justify spending premier draft capital on getting one of those guys and bringing him in, and then you have another quarterback controversy. You're only doing that if you're getting a guy like a Justin Fields, who, like I said, is clearly better in all facets of the game. But outside of that, yeah, there's question marks with Zach Wilson. You mentioned the shoulder injury, and Coastal Carolina, they banged him around. When he played a tough defense, he kind of got exploited a little bit. And Trey Lance, he played one game last season, and the production wasn't there. And you would have liked to see him go back to school to really see him build on what he can do, because he does have a high ceiling. It just hasn't been consistent enough. And there's certain questions of his game that he needs to answer. But like I said, there's no clear cut guy outside of Justin Fields or Trevor Lawrence that you could say, yeah, that guy has a franchise quarterback written all over it, and he's better than Jalen. So I think that they really should roll with Jalen Hurts and start to build around him and do things the right way.
Andrew DiCecco here, Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast at DiCecco NFL on Twitter. His latest over at InsideTheBirds.com is a scouting report on the new safety, Anthony Harris. And that's where I want to go to on the defensive side, Andrew, because I know a lot of people, if you go by the mock drafts out there, everyone's basically projecting the Eagles to go either a wide receiver or some sort of offensive player in the first round, whether it's Kyle Pitts or Jamar Chase. So that leaves the second round and the third and the fifth round picks to potentially be defensive players. And the first question I want to ask you is Asante Samuel Jr. That's a guy who I see a lot of Eagle fans throwing that name out there. The Eagles should get this guy in the second round. First of all, I want to ask you, will he be available in the second round? And if the Eagles were to pick him up, how would he fit onto this team?
Yeah, he would be available in the second round, right around where the Eagles are picking, I would say. And some people look at his size and they think slot corner. Yeah, that might be where he ends up in the NFL, but he can play on the outside. He's a scrappy, tough, physical guy. And you would feel a little bit more comfortable taking a guy like Asante Samuel Jr. because you get the sense that his dad isn't going to let his son be a bust by any means. He has that pedigree. So, but he's versatile. He can play inside or outside. He was a good man corner in college. That said, he has some limitations as far as size. And I think the Eagles, if you really look at Jonathan Gannon and the defensive backs that he's had success with, the Xavier Rose, the Rocky Sins, and players of that mold, they tend to be the 6 foot and above and have a lengthier frame and they're physical. And that was why I would look at somebody like an Eric Stokes, a J.C. Horn at the end of the first round, should they decide to trade down. There's going to be a lot of guys at the end of the first, early second that are going to be in play. But that's kind of where I would stand with him. Do I think he's just a slot corner? No, but I think that he has limitations if he's going to be on the outside. And they already have a smaller corner in Avonte Max that they tried to pigeonhole as an outside corner, and it didn't quite work out. So I think that they really need to go into this with the mindset of get a prototypical size corner. There's a lot of really good ones in this draft, and you don't want to mess that up.
You mentioned J.C. Horn. He's a very interesting case to me as a prospect because he had some really huge flashes in college, but I'm not 100% sure what is his position in the NFL, because I feel like is he a corner? Is he potentially a safety? What do you think his potential is in the NFL? Because he's another guy that a lot of people are throwing his name out there.
Yeah, I think he's a boundary corner at the next level. Very, very athletic, good, terrific match mirror technique. But I would say that sometimes, and I really like that he has that alpha mentality, which is a lot of what the great corners, the Jalen Ramseys and those type of guys, they have that mindset. And sometimes that was to his detriment. It can be to a defense's detriment. And sometimes that was to JC's detriment because he gets flagged. He's a little grabby. He gets flagged a lot, and that's not going to fly at the next level. So there's certain things that he's going to have to alter in his game because it's not going to cut it at the next level. But I mean, I do like his physicality, and he does fit that mold. I believe he goes about 6'1", 205. And that fits the Jonathan Gannon mold. So I mean, if they do decide to trade down, they won't be able to trade down too far to get JC, because remember, Caleb Farley is going through that back procedure, so he's going to probably tumble out of the first round. So now it bumps up JC Horn as that second corner. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens there.
Now the Eagles have 2 third-round picks, 2 fifth-round picks. They could stick with those picks, or they could trade up into the end of the second round. So who are some guys who would be available in the late second round or in the third round that the Eagles can target on the defensive side that makes sense for, as you put, Jonathan Gannon, what he wants to do with that defense?
Yeah, I mean, I would say Elijah Molden, the corner from Washington, would be a big one for me. And what he does is he kind of reminds me of Tyrann Mathieu, the Honey Badger. And yeah, a lot of folks might be thinking they don't need a nickel corner. Well, they were looking at, they sniffed around the 49ers nickel corner, the 30-year-old, and so it made me kind of think that maybe they have plans to move Avonte Max to safety, and they can use this guy, Elijah Molden, who is pro-ready and a plug-and-play option right off the bat. that he can play. He can play all around the secondary and as a positionless type of player. So he's someone that I would look at. The defensive end, Rashad Weaver from Pitt, is another guy that I really like. The Eagles really need. They have Derek Barnett, who's a bit of an enigma. They have Brandon Graham, who's getting a little long in the tooth, and they have Josh Sweat, who's a little bit limited as far as the snaps that he can shoulder due to his injury history. So they really need to continue to get younger on the defensive end, at the defensive end position. I think that you look at Pitt's defensive line, and Jalen Twyman, the defensive tackle, he's another guy that I'm really high on. That the Eagles need help there. They can get him probably in the 4th round. But Rashad Weaver would be a nice play, a nice pickup in the 3rd round.
Andrew DiCecco joins us every Tuesday and Thursday for Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Latest edition with Adam and Jeff Mosher. Adam Kaplan will join us tomorrow on Football at 4 here on 97.3 ESPN. And as all guests, Andrew appeared on the Boardwalk on the hotline. Andrew, before I let you go, I am turning this into a theme with everyone who comes on. How do you like your coffee, and what is your coffee preference? I ask this because I'm finding myself more and more, if I do go out and get coffee, I'm getting either the Cuban dark roast or the 100% Colombian. So, if you go out and get coffee, where do you go? What is your preference? How do you like your coffee? I want some details here.
I like the Colombian. I'm kind of in that similar mode. I like my cold brew. And then depending on the day, sometimes I'll just drink it black. It depends.
Okay, so you're not one of these guys who likes the fancy drinks. I'm glad to hear that, because I'm always kind of
no.
I'm always kind of wondering, like if you ever, like, for example, if you ever go to Wawa or Starbucks and you see people like with their orders and you're like, are you getting coffee or are you getting like French vanilla flavors with coffee? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm not sitting there. If I can't pronounce it, I'm not getting it. You know what I mean? Like, I can't justify getting it. I'm a simple guy. I like my coffee. As long as it's strong, I don't really care.
I like that. If I can't pronounce it, I don't want it. That's the line of the day so far. He's Andrew DiCecco at DiCecco NFL on Twitter, and as all guests, he appeared on the Boardwalk Hotline. Great stuff today, Andrew. Have a good one.
My pleasure, Josh. Take care, man.
Josh Hennick here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. And don't forget, Football at 4 is being brought to you by Dr. Lyle M. Back. For everything from skincare to cosmetic surgery, go to iloveLyleBack.com or call 856-MAKEOVER for Dr. Lyle M. Back, proud sponsor of Football at 4. A lot of great stuff there from Andrew